And welcome to another edition of License to Steal. I'm Jeff DeForest. Very happy to have you guys with us. We have some of the top handicappers around the country set to join us here on the show. And last week, wow, it was a burial of the bookmakers out in Las Vegas. So a lot of people crying about that. And the chalk players prevailed. Always somewhat insulting to have somebody accuse you of being Mr. Chalk, but it wasn't a bad thing last week. They were walking out of the casinos instead of in the usual body bags, but with bags full of cash. And I've said this many times because I've been a horse racing guy since I was like 14 years old. I always wanted to have the end come this way, where my ashes would be spread at the 16th pole at Gulfstream Park, where all of my horses died. And you were seeing bookmakers having their ashes spread all over Las Vegas. Bellagio fountains, from the rooftop at the Stratosphere, a rooftop bar at the Rio. Their names were being emblazoned on the outside of the Sphere in memoriam. It was a tough week for the bookmakers last week, and we hope to make it another tough week on them with the expertise we're going to provide you with here today on the show. We have Toby producing, and we introduce right away from Seattle, Washington, the heavyweight champion of the world, Troy West. He's been dynamite. This guy's been on some kind of a run. I've witnessed this over the last several weeks since I've been talking with him on a variety of shows, including this one, and we welcome him to the program here. And no wonder he looks great today and extremely happy because you've been hitting just about everything out of the park. You look like Otani. Troy, how are you, my friend?
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, as a handicapper doing this a long time, you understand these type of runs do come to an end. But right now, we're riding a great wave, and it's all sports. Like you said, we're capping hockey at a high level. NHL's off to a great start. MLB playoffs have been outstanding. We even got the WNBA going, and then of course our bread and butter with college football, NFL, and then we also dabble into the UFC. So. No, we're not flipping coins, Defo. I promise. We're not flipping coins. Um, we're putting our hard-earned knowledge into this, and we're coming out with some cash on the flip side. And like you said, we're stealing from the bookies right now.
WNBA, nobody paid attention to it. I mean, after that We Got Next campaign when they first originated the league, and you were thinking, yeah, you got next, go fuck yourselves. You're going to sit out like 6 games like these other guys are at the park before we let you out there on the court. Nobody cared about it till Caitlin Clark came along. Now people are sending it in giant denominations, and that had to be a rough one if you had the Lynx last night. Spread, I think, went off 2.5. They're up 15 in the first half of the ball game. You saw the Liberty kind of crawling back into it. Then at the end of the game, the Lynx have a shot to go ahead and put it into overtime, and Liberty miss a shot. They come back, and now the game's tied. And Ionescu, like Pete Maravich, comes right
Yeah.
across the midcourt stripe, sinks a three from the Coke machine. Guess what? Final margin 3. And those that had the Lynx in the 2.5, they end up with a dagger in their back. But interesting. I mean, are you seeing a lot of interest in betting WNBA games? Because it's marginal for me to even think about watching them, and yet I found myself immersed in that a little bit last night.
Yeah, it's tough when you're competing against the Dodgers Mets series, right? I've always wondered, if you're going to do the WNBA, I really think you've got to do it in the dog days of summer. Personally, I just think you're way better off having these because there's great matchups going on. I mean, you look at what Caitlin Clark and the ratings she brought. You just had the Liberty take care of the Las Vegas Aces. That was a great series with a ton of firepower. The New York Liberty, a lot of fun to watch with, like you said, Sabrina Ionescu, Brianna Stewart. This is a team that's been to the finals 5 times, has yet to get one. So a fantastic game last night, but obviously was very much overlooked by the Dodgers Mets. So I really wish that the WNBA would shift their season, and play that thing early summer. And I think you'd see a lot more betting action on it, without a doubt.
All right, we have Troy West with us here to start things off as we try to help you steal some money here over the weekend. Of course, giant slate of college football, a couple of real big marquee matchups, not the least of which the number one what would be Texas and Georgia. I know that's not going to be one of your official picks here on the show, but what are your thoughts about that game? Georgia getting 5 and a hook in some places. Seems like a pretty inviting proposition, even though Texas has been playing great football, and many people think they are indeed the best team in the country.
I think they probably are the best team in the country, but Georgia, they've been up and down all year, and I get it, but they love these type of games. These are the type of games that they get up for. They've already laid an egg against Alabama in the big game. I don't see them laying an egg here again. Texas, they're not prone to these type of games. They haven't had these big marquee games like Georgia has. Georgia's had some tough competition. They've had Clemson on the schedule already. They've had Kentucky on the schedule. They've had Alabama on the schedule. I like Georgia to go into Texas. I think this game's decided by a field goal. So I do like the points. I just think anytime you get a guy like Carson Beck and you get an opportunity to get him with points and Kirby Smart with points, I'm going to take the points.
All right, yeah, I mean that would be an easy theory to understand and go ahead and embrace. And then the other big one would be Alabama, Tennessee. Tennessee sitting there at 4-1. There were some people that thought they might be national championship contenders. Maybe some of that theory has dissipated of late. But Alabama, surprisingly, after that big win, they had to collapse in the second half against Georgia, managed to pull it out with a miracle play at the end of the game. But since then, subsequent to that, they lose straight up to Vanderbilt and then looked like they were going to lose to South Carolina. People were choking on their roadkill in the stands there in Tuscaloosa as they were watching that game. They managed to eke out a victory. So, very suspect Alabama team, and they're laying 2.5 on the road in this one against Tennessee. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is one of those ones I like a home dog. Anytime you get these home dogs in these big games like this, it's juicy, right? And like you said, Alabama, they've been shaky. I think they're going to play a good football game. I just think that crowd level is going to be too much. Tennessee's defense has been great this year. They're well coached, they're well quarterbacked. Give me Tennessee in a close one. I think this is going to be like a 28-27 dramatic fashion type of game, but I'm really looking forward to this one. But I'll take the points with the balls.
All right. One thing that we love about you is because you're out there in Seattle, Washington, you do have your finger on the pulse of what's going on out there on the West Coast. And I know you have close ties with the California coach. Cal laying 10 this week against NC State, who's been awful this season. Is 10 too much to lay in this ballgame? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, this would be an official play for me. I've had this one circled. I just, we've talked about it, Defo. I don't have the exact stats, but it's incredible when you see these ACC teams going from the East Coast to the West Coast. You see these Big Ten teams going from the East Coast to the West Coast. They're just not covering. And a lot of times they're losing the games outright. I've got tons of examples of that throughout the course of the year. But NC State's got to get on an airplane, fly into Cal Berkeley. That's a 4.5, 5 hour flight. Cal's been pretty darn good at home. We saw it earlier this year against Miami when Miami went into Cal. That should have been Cal's win. They were a 10-point underdog in that game, should have won it outright. I like Cal in a big way in this one. They're well coached, they'll be ready to go. I don't see NC State getting up for this game. Give me Cal. I think they win this game 33-17 type of football game. I take the Cal Bears minus the 10.
All right, first pick by Troy West here on the show that we're going to mark down as one of his official plays. Cal laying 10 points against NC State, who is being beaten like a drum all season long. They've almost become a punchline this year. So Cal laying to 10 is one of your plays. You also have had a good line on Arizona State and the teams out of Arizona, and they're taking on Cincinnati, a Bearcats team that has been fairly profitable for us in the games that we played them in this year. What do you think?
Yeah, you and I talked about this one earlier the week, Defo, and this line was 2.5, 3, and I think it's jumped to. I saw it jump all the way to 6.5. I think it's back down to 5 now. But again, Arizona State, they've had two home games back to back. They played Kansas and then they played Utah on Friday night. Very physical football games. Now you got to go on the road at Cincinnati. This is a 9 a.m. Pacific time start. These teams really struggle. Arizona State's been playing these night games, 7:30 Pacific time starts. Now you got to go play a 9 a.m. on the East Coast, which is really a 6 a.m. start over there. Give me Cincinnati minus the points. Again, I want to double check that line default. I think it's around 5 now, but give me Cincinnati minus the points against Arizona State.
All right, this might frighten you a little bit. I know you want to look at a professional game here in the NFL, and it's going to be an early start. I don't know if you're going to get up and watch this thing. I know you're somewhat of an early riser from some of the other things that we do, Troy West, but I'm looking at a huge advantage here. I know that Jacksonville wants to get out of town. They're trying anything to relocate. They were talking about moving the team to Toronto, and the fans responded, and they started to get a few more people in the seats. Looked like they were going to be a team that was on the ascent. Lawrence, number one overall pick, started to find the range under Doug Peterson. Now you have Peterson in the Ed Ogeron position. His ass is feeling a little bit of heat, I would imagine. Lawrence has looked like garbage all year long, certainly not acquitted himself very well. They go against the New England Patriots, but they've been sitting in London for a week, eating shepherd's pie and drinking warm Guinness stout. while the Patriots are going to be coming in for the weekend. My immediate thought on that game was the line makers should give the Patriots 10 points right away before they even look at any factors and then work their way up or down from there. In this case, Jacksonville, with their poor results so far this year, only laying 5.5, but I think they're in a garden spot here. I mean, they found the old G spot, as they say, laying 5.5 in what kind of amounts as a home game to them against the New England Patriots, who have been inept and now are starting Drake May. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm leaning Jacksonville without a doubt, minus the points. I think you can get 5 or 5.5 here. And I'm with you. I think Doug Peterson, I think he probably knows this is it for him. I think he's still going to have a lot of pride and coach his team up. Trevor Lawrence isn't the type of quarterback to me that is just going to show up and not perform, right? This is a guy that's a first class quarterback. I get he's having a really bad year this year, but I like Jacksonville. Like you said, this was their second week in London. The Patriots, Drake May. And not only now, I think the Patriots really are in rebuild mode. So I think even on the defensive side of the ball, they're going to start playing guys that normally wouldn't have an opportunity to play. So I think you're getting a Patriot team that's really playing for a draft pick at this point. They've thrown in the towel, waved the red flag. Give me the Jacksonville Jaguars minus the points. I think they win this game like 35-17, 35-13, but I think it's going to be a bloodbath. I just think Jacksonville's still got the talent. I get it. They're 1-5. They've looked like crap all year, but they're still well coached. They've got a good quarterback. And I think on the other side of the ball, you've got a Patriots team that's really just kind of looking into next year, looking at draft picks, seeing what they've got in Drake May, seeing what they've got at other positions. Give me the Jaguars.
All right. You've been doing a great job with your service, turning your followers on to all kinds of victories. I think the only guy that might be in the same range of being on fire as you is our good friend AJ Johnson of Bleacher Brothers, who on this rebet thing is like 62-3, a remarkable number, unfathomable, documented picks. But how can people get involved with your service and get your great insight into all the different events that you guys handicap?
Yeah, thanks, Defo. Get to our Instagram. It's Troy West. We give out a lot of free plays there. We give out a whole bunch of free promos that we're doing. We go to the website as well, troywins.com. All of our packages will be there. We've got a great promotion, 7 days for $7. There's no upsells, no gimmicks. Everybody gets all of the same plays. And we cover it all. We do prop bets, we do prize picks. We do, like I said, UFC, college basketball, football, you name it. It's not just me. We've got a team of handicappers that are doing this for you. That's troywins.com. And the Instagram is It's Troy West.
All right. Good luck with everything over the weekend, Troy. Thanks so much for joining us. And we'll catch you again next week on the next episode of License to Steal.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks. That's Troy West. The man sends me what he is giving out to his clients on a frequent basis. And he's been killing it. It's been great. Now, we welcome into the show one of my favorite guys. Now, this is something that you have to. I have nothing but respect for this man, the professor. We kind of got beaten up. We were bleeding from every pore last
I'm
week with
starting
the
to
college
consider
picks.
never coming away on this show again. Honestly, it seems like it's an albatross hanging around my neck, but I can't resist the impulse to come in and set more people's money on fire. So,
Well,
well,
and
I
our good
mean,
friend. Yeah, go ahead.
it is what it is, Defo. With a
It
terrible week
happens.
last week. Um, honestly, and I know Troy was on it last week too. The one scenario I didn't see with Utah kicking off the weekend was that Cam Rising was going to come in and actually play like a corpse.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't know what blackmail material he has Whittingham that they didn't pull him from that game. But yeah, I mean, that sort of started the weekend and it just went from there. It was bad calls, and poor execution just across the board.
Our friend Brandon Lang of Two for the Money fame, played by Matthew McConaughey in the movie that was based on his early handicapping prowess and the things
Really,
that
it
he
was
was
played
doing.
by Matthew McConaughey. I've never heard him mention that even once.
Believe me, every chick with giant breasts that he ran into in Las Vegas and those strip clubs he goes to, he may as well have been Money Mayweather just by dropping that piece of
No,
information.
I was there when he did the Radio Row show with us, and he was telling dudes in the bathroom about it.
Yeah, that's a nice claim to fame. I
No,
mean,
no, no. Look, he's got a good opinion. He's a good dude, but
yeah.
yeah, that's a fact. I would too. I mean, I would honestly, I would settle if John Goodman played me in the movie. I'd be bragging about it. If you get McConaughey, that's definitely something you're dropping into every conversation for the rest of your life.
Oh, no doubt about it. But he long time ago, I remember talking to him, and he had written this, I guess, in one of his offerings. I think it was a book, and he said that the key in all of this, you have to be able to survive the negative streaks, and you're going to have them, no matter how sharp of a handicapper you are. So I trust that you're going to bounce back,
Let's
and I
hope
think.
so.
Yeah, well, if not, then that beautiful place I visited in Lighthouse Point, maybe with a for sale sign on it pretty soon. But no, I know you can survive it, and I think you're going to bounce back. Some really tough beats, like you said, bad calls, and all kinds of negative things happening.
I mean, really, I'm not blame the refs, guys. So I don't want to do that. I will say, repeatedly strange coaching decisions, particularly by one Ryan Day, in that Ohio State Oregon game. So it is what it is. That happens sometimes.
All right, let's take a look at it. Now, you concentrate primarily, almost exclusively on college football. So, where do you want to start out, Professor?
We're starting out tonight. Getting the points with Boston College against Virginia Tech. I'm showing it at 7.5. It was 8 a little early in the day. I took it personally at 7.5 last night. Uh, don't really understand why VT's north of a touchdown here. Castellanos did come back for Boston College last week. He had a couple turnovers, but coming back from an injury, that's to be expected. I expect sharper form from him in the Eagles' offense tonight. Again, Boston College, when he's hurt, they're less effective. They've got that sort of triple-headed running back situation. They all get about equal touches, and I think their yards are within 50 each coming into the night through 6 games. Castellanos obviously adds a different element with the quarterback run there, and I think that will be effective against a Virginia Tech defense that, for some reason, really off this season against the run. We think about the Hokies, we think about a very stingy defense. They're 187th against the rush coming
Wow.
into this season, and I don't think that's a good matchup for them to be north of a touchdown tonight. So yeah, really liking Boston College plus the points here. Money line is tempting to some people. I think if you get north of a touchdown in this spot, I'm looking at a touchdown or less game. I wouldn't even be surprised if this is a field goal game either way. So take the points. I think it's free, a free win.
All right, Boston College getting 7 and a hook against Virginia Tech. Moving into what, Saturday, or are you going to go ahead and make a play on tomorrow night's action?
No, we actually have something tomorrow night too, and that's Oklahoma State getting 9.5 from BYU. I'm showing that right at the moment. I know this has been bouncing between 9 and 10 all week. Right at the moment, I'm showing 9.5. Oklahoma State, obviously, much better team on the road as a road dog historically than they are as a home favorite. Gundy's actually been very dangerous in this situation over the years. They do have a questionable situation with Ollie Gordon, but Ollie Gordon, really, as good as he was coming into the season, hasn't been that guy. Questionably, he's even been their best running back this year. So I don't view that injury as that big a deal. BYU is a very solid team, but I don't know that I'm comfortable laying near a touchdown and a field goal here, or even north of a touchdown in this spot. They are better against the pass than they are against the run, and you saw that last week when they played Arizona. But you've also seen their offense struggle in a couple of spots. They did not play great against SMU early in the year. They were not particularly great against Baylor. I think the Oklahoma State defense, that 3-3-5, is going to give them some problems. BYU more of a power run team, and Oklahoma State, 40 years later, they're still playing that Jimmy Johnson philosophy on defense where they just want as much speed against the run game as possible, and it's been pretty good for them. I expect them to be similar here. Again, you're north of a touchdown in what I view as a touchdown game. So give me the Cowboys plus a 9 here.
You think there was any evidence that Ray Lewis was doing steroids when he was a pro? I think when he was at he was a 190-pound linebacker. And then he goes to the Ravens and ends up at like 270, running a 4.340. You think there was some juice involved? I know that the Ravens were considering having Victor Conti on their medical staff.
It would explain a couple of rage incidents.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe that incident with the shots fired at the Super Bowl.
I have no comment on what I mean. Look, we were down here for it. Pretty much nothing would surprise me coming out of the University of Miami in that time period.
No, not at all.
Well, I've actually hosted shows a couple times where Warren Sapp has been a guest, and we all know Warren was actively snorting cocaine before an Orange Bowl one year, and Dennis Erickson shelved the test. So I know you used to do a show with Dennis Erickson, so
Yeah, Dennis, I always consider to be sort of a tortured genius. But what was funny was I hosted a lot of Hurricane Hotline shows where
a
they
lot
would
of
go to
rum
like
runners.
Tony Roma's, and the coach would be up there, and in a styrofoam cup, they would bring
Yeah,
whatever alcoholic beverage certain coaches were drinking. But Dennis actually had like a buffet of cocktails. He would mix up everything. They'd bring him a red wine, a margarita, a frozen drink,
he
and
was well known around town.
yeah,
Let's put it that
he
way.
was pretty well blasted by the time we got to the questions from the audience. Coach, you going to use so much? It was always great, but a good guy, and I had great success there in spite of the fact that he changed the system to one that looked kind of frightening there with that one back attack that was not very popular at the time, wasn't in vogue, and he managed to carve out a national championship. So didn't he win two? He won two of them, right?
Correct.
Dennis Erickson. All right, you have. Boston College plus 7.5 tonight. You're going to the Friday card for Oklahoma State. Anything else that strikes your fancy?
Yeah, we got two on Saturday. Indiana going up against Nebraska. Indiana is in sort of the classic spot. They've gotten noticed. A lot of people on the bandwagon, but they look at their schedule and they really have not played a high level team yet. And meanwhile, Nebraska, everybody kind of jumping off after getting kind of heavily on a couple weeks ago, but they took that home loss to Illinois on a Friday night game, and they have not managed to crack the top 25 since, despite a 5-1 record overall. You look at these two teams, I see a, a very equal game. The difference is Nebraska's been tested a couple of times, and Indiana has not. And the one number that sticks out to me, Indiana, one of the more impressive balanced offenses in the country, coming in 315 yards a game in the passing game, 200 yards a game in the rushing game. I don't think Indiana's going to be able to run the ball in this game. You look at Nebraska, we saw that defensive line a couple of times throughout the course of the season. They are 11th in the country against the rush. I think they will stymie the Indiana running game. Now, does that mean that Nebraska's going in and getting a win? It's possible. I don't know that I'd say 100%, but at plus 6.5 in this spot, I think that Nebraska team will come in and get the money and get the cover. Indiana, again, has not been tested like this to this point in the schedule. You look at their schedule. I don't even know who you'd say their best opponent would be so far. Maryland, maybe, possibly, depending on what you think, I guess, of a Northwestern. But again, struggled a little bit with both those teams. Needed scores late to pull away late in both those games. I think serious upgrade in class this week in form for Indiana. They're as you know, you're a horse racing guy. They're in their I think their first stakes test this week, and I don't know that they're going to fail in terms of getting a win. They may come out with a close win here, but I do not think they will cover the 6.5. So give us the Cornhuskers plus 6.5 here. Would not be surprised to see Dylan Raiola react in a big way. So far in his two primetime showings, he's actually played very well. He played great against Colorado, played very well against Illinois. Unfortunately, his defense could not get enough stops for him in that game, and they ended up taking the loss there. But I think they will come away this week with at least the money, if not the win, straight up.
Much like Army has been a darling, just money sent from heaven for our good friend A.J. Johnson of Bleacher Brothers. Indiana has been a favorite of a couple of friends of mine, including Scotty M, who's going to join us next year on the program. But a lot of people have been cashing on Indiana, and yet I agree with you that this will be a much more stern test for them
Again,
than
I'm not
anything
saying
they face.
Indiana's going to win, not going to win the game. They may win the game. I just don't see a justification for them laying near a touchdown in this spot again. And look, we've seen it throughout the course of I bought into it last week with Ohio State. Ohio State had played Cupcake City. They went into their first test of Oregon, and once again, despite NFL talent all over the field on the defensive side of the ball, what happens? Oh, third year in a row, their defense looks totally helpless when they step up in weight class. I personally think if you look at Indiana, it will be that Indiana running game, which has been borderline dominant to this point in the season, that ends up tripping up here, particularly against a stout Nebraska defense against the run. But I do think one element will end up hamstringing Indiana in this game and keep them from covering that number.
I always like when something happens in a game that demands an immediate rule change, and that happened with that 12th man on the field, where they ended up running 4 secons off the clock and gave up the 5 yards. I guess Ohio State was facing a third and
I don't
25.
have a problem with the change. It's a bad rule. It's
Yeah,
obviously an exploit. all credit to Dan Lanning for figuring out how to exploit it in a crucial situation. But fundamentally, yes, it's a bad rule. I think most people who are on Ohio State, myself included, will tell you the bigger call was the offensive pass interference that came right before the 12-man incident, which I personally, again, and I hate being, it's the refs. I thought it was a very shaky call. Um, just my opinion. One that if they run it 100 times, they're maybe going to call it once or twice in the exact same scenario. They threw the flag that time. It happens,
All right. We have 3 picks in the bank here from the professor. BC
One more.
plus 7.5, Oklahoma State plus 9.5, and Nebraska plus 6.5. All dogs. What's the last one on the ledger?
Last one on the ledger is Georgia getting 5 from Texas in the big game of the week. The SEC has just been total chaos to this point. Texas, a lot of people keep leaning back to them on that Michigan game, but as we found out, turns out Michigan's really kind of shaky. I was not impressed with Ewers' form in his return last week. I thought he looked more than a little bit off against Oklahoma. Fortunately for them, their defense came up big and Oklahoma kept putting themselves in bad situations. So the Longhorns managed to pull away in the game. But I did not think Ewers was sharp in that game at all. He will have to be against the Georgia defense. And you're going to say, well, Alabama really bombed them out a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, they did, but they did it by pressuring the edge with the quarterback run. Texas is not going to pressure the edge, particularly with a quarterback run. And really, they don't run outside with the running backs particularly well to begin with. They're more of a between the tackles team running the ball. When they attack the edge, they like to do it in the passing game. That's going to be more difficult to do against Georgia. I would not be surprised to see Georgia go into Texas and pull the upset Saturday night, particularly if they can avoid the slow starts that have sort of plagued their season to this point. So Georgia plus the 5 and the chaos. Excuse me.
Yeah. You've been hanging out
Chaos.
with our buddy Mark Lawrence, I think. All dogs here this week.
Yeah, the chaos in the SEC, I think, will continue. So Georgia plus the 5.
All right, sounds good, Professor. Always a pleasure, my friend. We'll talk to you tomorrow on a couple of our adventures, and thanks so much for being with us. Good luck. We hope this streak is over.
If not, I'm a straight fade.
Thanks so much for being with us. It's always a pleasure, my friend.
Have a great one, Dave.
The professor, ladies and gentlemen, some in-depth analysis there. It hasn't been working out too favorably the last couple of weeks, but this is a man I have ultimate faith in. The professor's been dynamite for us over the years, and here's another guy that really, just reeks of credibility here. Our good friend, best hair in all of handicapping, Scotty Yam joins us here on the show. Scotty, how are you?
What's going on, Defoe? I hope you didn't hear the landscaper blowing the pile of money outside the front of my house in the background there. But I think I think they're done. But everything's good.
Yeah, they're going to need one of those leaf blowers, to blow the cash back into your bank account. Hopefully, after you make a couple of scores this week. But we talked about a bunch of things. Are you handicapping these baseball games at all? I know our man Toby, who's producing today, is a huge baseball advocate and has been having great success with that. Did you? You're from Boston, so I don't know if you have any rooting interest in this, but have you had any betting interest in the baseball game?
Yeah, I love playoff. I love playoff sports. You give me the NHL playoffs, you give me the baseball playoffs. NBA, whatever it is, football. You got to be a fan. Of the game first of all. To do what we do, you got to love. You got to love the sports. To begin with. To answer your question, yeah, I've been playing. I've been picking my spots. I had the Yankees the first game. Not a big deal, laying 160 in the first game. Didn't touch the second game. Haven't really touched the Mets and Dodgers series, but I think this game tonight is going to be really interesting for that series because you haven't seen the Mets drop back-to-back games in quite some time. I think I mentioned that to you recently. They haven't lost back-to-back. If they lose this game tonight and go down 3-1, I think they're done. I don't see any way they're going to beat the Dodgers. 3 out of the next 4 games. So this is a big-time game for the Mets tonight. Because, again, they haven't lost back-to-back. And if the Dodgers go in there and win 2 games in a row and go up 3-1, you could call this series over.
I have some latent Met fandom because of my years working at Shea Stadium as a vendor. I started when I was 14, and that was 1964 when they first opened up Shea. Turned out to be maybe one of the best jobs I've had in my lifetime, proportionate to the economy today and what money is valued at, because we were making pretty good coin for young kids. And my last season there was 1969, the amazing Mets, and that was just absolutely amazing. I still have one of the only bobbleheads that doesn't have a crack in it or where the spring isn't broken, which is amazing too, because the preservation of this thing has not been easy. And yet, as you were watching the game the other night, wow, it was really tough to take as the Dodgers just continued to pound away. I thought the Mets were in there with a big shot last night. And, they didn't capitalize on a couple of early opportunities. Severino looked good in the first inning, then barely got out of the second inning with the 2 runs. And you thought, all right, Mets have a chance to bounce back. And then it was Armageddon. But what was great, and I was telling Toby before the show that we had a couple of guys that liked the over. And you were dead wrong about everything. I thought Walker Buehler would get touched up and that the Dodger pen would fall apart behind him.
Yeah.
And sure enough, they throw nothing but goose eggs the entire game, and yet Ohtani's 3-run homer puts us over the top there. So we win when we should have lost on that one, which is always a nice feeling. Once in a while, you deserve one of those.
Yeah, well, that's what makes sports so great. I mean, from one game to the next, 1 week to the next in the NFL, and other sports the next night. One thing could happen one night, something totally 360 could happen the next night. So that's what makes it so interesting, and it makes the job I have so difficult because things change minute to minute, basically, when it comes to matchups.
You run into guys at the racetrack, and they're ice cold. They haven't cashed a ticket in months, and a guy gives you a horse, and he says, "Listen, the trainer told me this thing's going to run," and you kind of go into the Richard Dreyfuss mode and let it ride. Where after the guy walks away, you say, "Hey, thanks, Louis, for the tip," and then you turn and you go, "Put a line through that one." But you and the professor are going to start out here with your picks, and I know that you've been cashing on Indiana most of the season and had him a couple of times here in shows that we've done.
Yeah.
He likes the other side here, Nebraska, and I believe Mike Jones is going to join us after your appear here on the show. Also, is kind of leaning towards Nebraska as one of his picks. But you're going to stick with your guns here, Indiana, and tell both of those guys to just go ahead and put a line through it. You like Indiana in the game against Nebraska.
I actually do like them a lot because I've been following both of these teams quietly for the last several weeks. Nebraska, I had them the first couple of games of the season. I thought they would start out hot, which they did. And I had them in the first 2 games, and they covered for me, and I made money with them. But I see just the way this Indiana team is playing right now. And I know the professor made a comment like they haven't really played anyone. Well, let me tell you something. They're destroying everyone in front of them, whoever they're playing at this point in time. So I think the way they're playing on offense and their defense is showing up as well. A team like Nebraska seems like they're a hit and miss kind of team. They could either show up and be all world, or they could be a dud. Like in that game against Rutgers, they couldn't do anything really on the offense at all. I mean, Rutgers gave them field position multiple times in that game, and they only scored 14 points total. But they had the ball like deep in territory multiple times. They didn't really do much on offense. Yeah, that's one game. I get it. But this Indiana team's averaging 48 points a game. A game. That's almost 50 points a game. They're blowing out people. They're making themselves look really like an offensive weapon right now. And again, a game like this, if they're making Indiana 6.5, that's a number I respect because in a game like this, knowing Nebraska normally would be a favorite against a team like Indiana, but being the fact Indiana's 6-0, the games at home, they both had a bye week last week to prepare for this. I just see them staying hot. I see them staying right on course. I think they're going 7-0. I see them winning this game by double digits. I don't think Nebraska can stay in this game. I just don't think they have the firepower to stay with a team like Indiana that's on all cylinders right now.
All right, sounds good. You're going against the collection of handicappers we were speaking with here on the show and saying Indiana, keep riding the back of a winning trend and take them, lay the 6.5, not too much. And you're taking them over Nebraska in what some people are figuring is going to be a tight contest. All right, SMU is one of your selections here, taking on a very weak Stanford team. And SMU is favored by 14.5 points in this game. SMU and Stanford. Your thoughts on that?
I think this is just going to be an old-fashioned ass kicker right here. This is a game on paper, and the way these teams are going right now, I mean, I just see SMU dominating this game. They're 2-0 on the road. They're 5-1 overall. They're averaging 41 points a game. Stanford's averaging half that much. Stanford's been getting blown out by teams that are.
Kind of lost Scotty M there. He's kind of spacing in and out on us. But
Sorry about
there
that.
you go. All right.
Yeah, they're 1-2 at home. I just think that this game is all about the road team. They're making them 15, 15 and a half. It might even be up to 16 in places right now. I bring this line down to 15 points. I just see SMU controlling this game, finding ways to score points. They're putting up 40 a game. I could see them easily putting up 40 against a bad Stanford team. I don't see how Stanford's going to score 21 or more points in this game. So I'm thinking SMU wins this game by 20 to 25 points in an absolute blowout.
All right, we're going to look at a few games in the pros here with Scotty M. And last week, I had my lungs on the table, and they were having to do a dissection on me because I was ready to bet inner organs on the Minnesota Vikings in that game in London against Jacksonville. They were only laying 2.5 points. I didn't think I was going to have to schwitz like a pig to get that Viking team home, but we managed to cover and barely. Oh, that was against the Jets, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, the Jets. I thought the Jets were in total disarray, and Minnesota was my bet of my lifetime last week. They get off to a sensational start, and then of course the Jets came back and nearly pulled the thing out. Ended up firing their coach and went with the assistant coach. This is going back a couple of weeks, and they're taking on Minnesota now, undefeated. They're taking on Detroit, only laying 2.5 points. Detroit shellacked the Dallas Cowboys, something I was absolutely in delight of. There's nothing better than seeing Jerry Jones agonizing in the box there and then making a bunch of excuses after the game. Mike McCarthy, his position has been very, very tenuous for the last couple of years. Nobody knows whether Dak Prescott was going to be worth the money or not. So far, you would have to say no. What are you thinking in this one? Minnesota, do they stay unbeaten with Sam Darnold? They're writing a Cinderella story, or does Detroit handle them in this game, getting 2.5 points?
I think the key to this game is going to be the Minnesota defense. I think the schemes they're going to throw at Jared Goff is going to cause him to maybe have to move around a little more than he likes to. He's a big-time pocket passer, but if he feels the heat, he's going to have to start tiptoeing around the tulips. Minnesota. And when you're playing a team that's on a high like they are right now, I mean, they're playing excellent football. They're not making many mistakes. Yeah, they make one here and there, but Detroit can make mistakes. I mean, we've seen that, their first couple of games, they started out a little slow. Yeah, they've been picking up some steam recently, and they definitely ass-kicked Dallas last week. But I don't know if that just Dallas bent over, when the game just got out of hand early. And, so I can't really think it was all about Detroit. I think that Dallas kind of threw the towel in on that game a little earlier than they wanted to. But yeah, no, Detroit's playing real well. But I like the way Minnesota's playing on both sides of the ball, and I like the way they're responding to Darnold. And they got weapons. I mean, they got a world class receiver, Jefferson. There's nobody better than this guy probably in the league as far as that goes. You got a little running game. You got a strong defense that could cause turnovers against a team that could force it. Jared Goff. I mean, he's been playing excellent. I can't take anything away from him and his performance and, the weapons he has as well. But I just think at this point in time, I would money line this game. I know it's dropped down to about 1.5 from 2.5. A little sharp money's gone on the game. But I'm sticking with my guns on this one. I think the Vikings are just too strong right now. They're very focused, and I believe they get the job done. They had time off. They're coming into this game right. It's going to be tough to beat them in their stadium.
All right, we're going to look at a couple of more pro games here with Scotty M. Atlanta, they've made some pretty strong showings. The Atlanta Falcons of late. Seattle started out 3-0 and have come back to the pack and an abysmal, at best, performance by Geno Smith, who a lot of people consider to be suspect to begin with. Looked like he had more than demonstrated that he was at least in the top half of quarterbacks in the National Football League last season. But this last performance was horrendous. Atlanta laying 3 against Seattle. I know you have a strong opinion about this one.
Well, like I told you on the other show I work with you on, they're going in opposite directions, these teams right now. Basically, Seattle was 3-0. They've dropped their last 3 in a row. The Falcons started out a little shaky. They've won their last 3 in a row. They came back and won 2 games in the last seconds, against Tampa Bay and New Orleans. And last week, put a full game together and blew out Carolina by 18 points. I like the way they're playing right now. I like the way their weapons are working for their running game is strong. Kirk Cousins has been playing tremendous. He's not making those mistakes. He's not forcing like he normally used to do. He used to try to force stuff, and he'd make a lot of turnovers, and it would cost them games. They're just playing right now at a different level than Seattle is. And I like teams that are going in one direction, are going against teams in another direction. Seattle's finding ways to lose games. Atlanta's finding ways to win games. So that's a big advantage for me, a guy like me that's looking to move money on certain teams. I look for teams that have that momentum. And right now, Atlanta has that momentum. Seems like they're moving in a good direction where Seattle's just kind of flatlining. They're 3-3, 3 wins, 3 losses. So I like Atlanta in this spot. I would bring the line down to -2. Some guys could even do a money line. You win, you win. That's not a bad idea. I mean, you're going to lay probably 140 on the money line or 145, whatever the case may be. But I like Atlanta in this game. I think in their building, the way they're playing right now off a big-time win last week, Seattle's been down. They've been a lot of points up. If Kirk Cousins puts together a masterpiece game, he could throw for over 400 yards against that Seattle defense.
Did you also have an opinion on the Colts and the Dolphins?
Colts and Dolphins? No.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I thought I wrote that down somewhere, and I thought because that's a curious spot. Also, it looks like the money's going on the Colts in this one slightly. Anyway, the line has moved up in the Colts' favor, and the Dolphins coming off the bye week, still playing with Huntley at quarterback. Certainly, are surprising if they come off with a win here, just outright win. They end up still very much in the race without Tua. In the AFC East, which has shown that the Bills are a little bit suspect so far and haven't really convinced anybody that they're going to be a dynamo. And now I don't know if your thinking's altered at all about the status of the Jets with the addition of Devontae Adams. Now Mike Williams wants out. He's looking for a trade, but Adams you would think would be an upgrade. And, of course, has the chemistry and is in sync very much with Aaron Rodgers, which is not an easy thing to do from what we've witnessed so far this year.
No, not at all. It's hard to, from what I heard over the years, it's tough to get along with Aaron Rodgers. You're either going to get along or you're not going to get along with him. But at the end of the day, there is a bond between these two guys. Obviously, he's living with him.
Yeah.
They're going over the play, supposedly, so he's already got him down pat. Devontae Adams already has the playbook down pat because, obviously he's around Aaron Rodgers 24 hours a day now. So they're going to probably step right in. I mean, they were one of the best duos probably in the history of the NFL out there. I mean, combining touchdown catches and so forth and so on. So it's definitely a big plus to have a wide receiver like that on your side, especially when he knows the quarterback and they had a relationship for many years and were very successful. But, the Jets are a scratch your head type of team, man. I got to be honest with you. You think they're going to show up and they're going to turn the corner, and then all of a sudden they hit a roadblock, and then they find ways to lose games. They give games away. They make mistakes. So, I'm not sold on the Jets, to be honest. Even with a world-class receiver like this, it's not about one player or 2 players. It's about the whole team. And if the team buys into the concept, and everybody jumps on the bus together. So I'm still not sold on the Jets. They may be a 50-50 team at the end of the year, even with all this talent that they have. I know everyone thought they were going to go cruise control right to the playoffs and maybe make some noise, but I don't know, man. The AFC East is weak. I get it with Tua being out, New England not being anything. Buffalo, is suspect. Like you say, you see they can be world class one week and come up empty another week. So that division is kind of a topsy-turvy right now. But I don't know about the Jets. I'm not sold on them. Not at this point. They may beat Pittsburgh this week, Because obviously the momentum might carry in for this one. But going long range, I still think Buffalo controls that AFC East easily.
The situation with the Jets reminds me of a line I used to hear all the time from my good buddy, may he rest in peace, Bert Sugar, of course, the great boxing guy with the fedora and the cigar. And he was just a classic. I used to hang out with him quite a bit when there were fights in Las Vegas. And he would say, this guy's got a great defense. He's blocking a lot of punches with his face. It seems like that's what's happening to Aaron Rodgers behind that very porous offensive line of the Jets, which has more holes in it than an O.J. Simpson alibi. So, that's an interesting situation to watch. All right, where can people get your information, Scotty M, if they want to follow you and your handicapping expertise?
Absolutely. Guys, check me out every day. I put out free stuff all the time. I have a private service if you're interested and you're a more serious player. You can shoot me a DM. Go right to my official TikTok page, SM Picks, Picks. That's my official page for TikTok. You can shoot me a DM. Free stuff all the time. Check it all out. We're here for you. Want to give you that winning edge.
All right, sounds good. Scotty, always a pleasure, my friend. Looking great. Obviously, feeling good about the selections this week, and we wish you all the best. We'll talk to you again next week, my friend.
All right, Defo, you're the best. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, that's Scotty M, ladies and gentlemen. All right, I will introduce this guy because we have some discrepancies here on the show. It would go like this if you were listening to the great Jimmy Lennon Jr., our senior, his old man, who was the epitome of class. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a split decision. And I'll never forget Jimmy Lennon Sr., when I used to go to the fights at the Olympic Auditorium. We'd be sitting ringside there on the apron calling the fights. And he always said to me, the minute, DeForest, you hear me say the word split, that's your time to duck under the ring apron because they're going to be bombarding the ring with bottles and cans. But I know we have a little discrepancy here on this Nebraska-Indiana game. Scotty M, he's going to stick with his Indiana Hoosiers. The professor, who's been ice cold the last couple of weeks, but trying to bounce out of it, he likes Nebraska. And we introduce you to Mike Jones now. And Mike, I know that was one of your plays as well, Nebraska over Indiana, based on some of the same logic that we heard from the professor. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. I'm good. Great to be with you. I just think I got a weird feeling about this game. I like the competition that the schedule that Nebraska has playing Rutgers at home in a very tough game, which they kind of dominated, and Rutgers is getting a lot of press that they're turning their program around. The Illinois game they lost was a tough game in overtime, but Illinois is a ranked top 25 team. This is a game that I think Matt Rule, it's one of these things that happens in big games in these situations. Where does the coaching play into it? I just like Matt Rule in this spot. I think getting 6.5 might be a little steep line. Indiana may win the game, but I just like Nebraska here with 6.5.
All right, so we come in at 2-1. Professor and Mike Jones liking Nebraska in this spot against Indiana, and Scotty M's going to stick with the Hoosiers on that one. So formulate, obviously, we're just putting suggestions out there, and you have to formulate your own opinion. But, Nebraska, as you say, has kind of been battle-tested, much more so than Indiana to this point, and could be a good reason to go ahead and at least, as my grandmother said to me on her deathbed, her advice was, Jeff, always take the points in these kind of situations. So Nebraska getting 6.5, I know is one of your plays. You're also looking on the college slate, Mike Jones, at Arkansas and LSU.
Well, I think Arkansas gained a lot of momentum with the win over Tennessee 2 weeks ago. LSU's, lost to Southern California, undefeated in the SEC, but yet still doesn't really have that dominant win, impressive win. You look at Brian Kelly's face on the sideline. Somehow he's like, "Why did I leave Notre Dame?" At times, wondering and communicating to players. It's kind of a little bit.
I know why. A satchel full of cash.
I sure did. But the type of player he's dealing with is a little bit different than a Notre Dame type player. So for me, I just see this as a spot that the two big NIL guys. I think I brought up the fact that these are the two biggest NIL schools in the country for all sports. I look at Arkansas here as being the shot, getting a home underdog, and the key factor for me was I like games that stay on three, hang around, and all of a sudden they take that move. You always got to be mindful of that move off three, and this one went in favor of Arkansas. So the guys out there are probably a lot smarter than me. Pulled it down to 2.5, and I'm going to ride them a little bit. If you feel secure, you want to buy it back to That's always an option. But I like Arkansas in the spot and maybe even win outright.
I know you want to take a look at a total in one of the pro games, but I did want to get your thoughts as we've been collecting ideas on a couple of the marquee games. We talked
Mhm.
earlier this morning about the Georgia game, and Georgia and Texas. Seems like the money's going towards Texas. I believe that line opened up at 4. I've seen it at 5, 5 and a hook. What are you thinking there? Because earlier we had a selection, and the professor was going to take Georgia with the points, I
Yeah,
believe.
I'm a
What
kind
do you
of
think?
lean. I'm a kind of lean toward the professor this way. I just look at this game where there's so much on the line here for Georgia. A second loss makes them now they're on the fence. If a third loss would probably eliminate them from the playoff. I think this is Texas' biggest test to date. I know it's tough to go down into Austin and play in that stadium. It's Texas. This is clearly their biggest test that they played. They caught a down Oklahoma team last week in a blowout. Yeah, I'm looking at Georgia to keep it close and may even win the game. I know that's against a lot of people I am talking about who think Texas is clearly the biggest team with all the horses. These are the games that Georgia somehow, comes out and plays well in, and I think Georgia in the spot to keep it close, if not win.
Yeah, good coaching all the way around. Sarkeesian's done a dynamite job there and resurrected his career after that ugliness that took place at USC. Of course, he was working with Nick Saban as an OC, and now at Texas, really has done a lot of good with that program where other people have floundered in spite of all of the money that the alumni are putting into it and their backers. So, yeah, he's been extremely confident with Texas, and yet it's always hard to go against Kirby Smart in these spots. So we've seen him come up big many, many times. So the points looking attractive to you in that one, although not an official play of
No.
Mike Jones here on the show. Did you have any viewpoint on Alabama and Tennessee?
I did watch the whole Alabama game. Being I have two South Carolina graduates in my family, so we are big Gamecocks in this house, and I can tell you that I was really not impressed. They were 21.5 point favorites, struggled to win, lost as a 22-point favorite a week ago or 2 weeks ago against Vanderbilt. So I just don't see this Alabama team getting into transition of bringing Caleb DeBoer in and being as good. I think they might miss Nick Saban maybe this year, next 12 months, possibly. He just looks a little overwhelmed a little bit to me. Um, I think Tennessee at home as an underdog. I agreed with you when we discussed this morning. We're surprised that Tennessee was a dog in this spot, but they had really good wins early and struggled with Arkansas. Obviously lost, and then last week against Florida as a 15.5 point favorite, struggled to beat a Florida team that people don't see as being a really big team. But I'm leaning a little bit toward Tennessee if I had to make a pick on it.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, the last 3 halves for Alabama have been less than sensational after that spectacular bludgeoning that they were administering to the Georgia Bulldogs when they went up 28-0. But since then, they've been really, really just almost atrocious, losing straight up to Vanderbilt and almost blowing a game at home to South Carolina. So, yeah, definitely very questionable at this point in the season. And Tennessee with the points might be a good play. Let's look at your pro game here and. I know you're, a huge Giant fan. I mean, going all the way back to your roots. You were there when, they were knocking out Frank Gifford, Chuck Bednarik with the big hit.
Well, that's
And
true.
if you've been a Giant fan, you probably feel like Gifford did at that point when he was seeing stars for the next 2 years. But tough choice here, Eagles and the Giants. Giants not getting a ton of points, but you wanted to take a look at the total in this one.
I do. I just look at both left tackles are out. The Giants get a little down. Really bad news this week, losing our Pro Bowl type potentially star left tackle, and Andrew Thomas. We're moving a couple guys around there. There's been a lot of talk in the media up north that why their number one pick for a couple years isn't playing. They're putting in a guy they drafted afterwards into that left tackle spot. Then the highlights come up, and he was the guy down here in Miami last week that missed on a block that got Daniel Jones hurt. So we have all this stuff going on with the media, which is kind of a distraction from what the real story should be, which is Saquon Barkley coming back. All of my anger in the offseason that Saquon Barkley left the Giants and went to our enemy. The fact that Philly has done some crazy things. And I'll take you back. If we go back to Gifford, let's move forward to Herman Edwards. It might be my real enemy. And I know for the younger people listening, in
Yeah.
1978, with the so-called fumble, which changed the rule that now most teams take a knee instead of laying down or trying to run a play at this point. Changed
Unless you're Mario Cristobal. Yeah.
It changed our – yes. Thought about the same thing when Mario did it last year. Shook
Yeah.
my head at that. But basically, I look at this game as, we just have problems on offense, both teams. Giants have only scored one touchdown at home. Philly, although they're getting their guys back, their receivers back last week, looked like they had a bunch of struggles blocking Cleveland the way they did. Our defensive front seems to be one of the best in the league right now. We lead the league in sacks. I just don't see a lot of points here in this game. I see like a 17-10 Philly win. I'd be surprised if the Giants did win in this spot, but I feel real secure with my under 42.5 play.
All right, I have a good friend of mine who's a huge Saints fan, and he's in New Orleans actually for this ball game tonight because he does spotting work for Westwood One, the radio broadcast. And he called me early this morning. He said, "Listen, Jeff, there's a gypsy in Jackson Square that just put a giant needle in a voodoo doll of Sean Payton. He returns to New Orleans tonight." Not sure how influential that's going to be in the outcome of the game because the Saints are up against it in all likelihood, playing a backup quarterback who you're familiar with again in the ball game tonight, and also without their two top wide receivers. The line on this game is not all that overwhelming, as you have the. You have the Broncos laying. Originally, they were getting one, weren't they? And now they're laying 2.5,
Right.
possibly based on the injuries and the fact that Carr isn't playing. What is your thinking about this one tonight? Will it take an act of the occult to get the Saints home in this one?
I think it might. I think we're in New York. I don't believe that Saquon Barkley is going to get that envisioned love from the Giant fans. I think on the other end down here, I think the Saint fans might embrace this a little bit with Sean Payton. And I've heard some quotes from Denver saying they're trying to make it every other game, and we're going there to play. But I don't know if it's their guy and they're behind them. Very interesting to watch the beginning of this game. How physical. Denver's a very physical team coming off a tough loss last week. A short week. Notoriously, you always like the home team in this early Thursday spot. I don't know. Why did that line move 4 points? Some people smarter than me are making a move on this game. I would kind of lean with now Shaheed out, which I think that's their deep threat. Where's a young quarterback going to go for weapons? I've watched the Giants for years now. Can't find their weapons anywhere on the field because they don't have any. It's going to be tough with their two best receivers out. I kind of lean a little bit toward Denver's defense controlling this game a little bit. Cesar Ruiz, the center, is not playing. Big part of that offensive line. I see Denver in this spot.
Yeah, could be an El Stinkaroo, too, on the Thursday night game. We're hearing Al Michaels crying about the quality of the schedule they gave him, although this was badly compromised by the absence of the two wide receivers for the Saints and also Derek Carr. Total on this game is only 37 points. My God. And even that is a questionable number. I would still be inclined to go with the under because the Broncos aren't lighting it up offensively either, and have been pretty stout defensively. Tough spot there, but I definitely think the Broncos over the Saints tonight looks like a pretty solid play. A couple of minutes left here. Quick thought on tonight's baseball action, if you have any feeling about it.
Yeah, I think Cleveland's up against it. One of the things we discussed today in our meetings was hey, if you take Cleveland tonight and lose, it's over. You don't have to worry about them ever again. They're done until we go to the next spring. So I kind of feel, and we did have some, Pete, I think we were talking run lines earlier in the day, but I think now, getting 105 or even money with
under, I thought it was a good time to jump on the underdogs.
yes. And the even money Cleveland bet, I think, would be my side in this game, just thinking that you got to figure at this rate, it's probably not going to be a sweep. And if it isn't, this is the game for Cleveland. So it's more or less kind of thinking out the history of the game more than loving the Indians in the spot. I kind of think that it won't be a sweep, and this is the game to get them.
All right. And are the Mets dead, as a lot of people think, after last night?
We thought about this, too. I hate to say it to all the Met fans out there. This might be a non-New York parlay tonight as you go against the New Yorkers. But, I think the Dodgers, I know Yamamoto had a great start. Quintana's been pretty good. It might struggle against a lefty, but I just see too much talent in that batting order for the Dodgers, and I think they got Ohtani going with that what looked like a rocket ship home run he hit the other night and last night. And I think the Dodgers in this spot would be my play.
All right, where can people find your picks and your selections on a regular basis?
Picks4profits.com with the number 4 in the middle. PIX4profits.com. We are our best bet. We give you a full refund if God forbid it goes down. So we'll have something up this week for sure.
All right. Sounds good. Mike, always a pleasure, my friend.
Good
luck with your picks, and thanks so much for joining us here on License to Steal.
Great to be with you.
Mike Jones, ladies and gentlemen. All right, that's going to do it for us. Wow, that went by pretty quickly. We hope you guys can have some success with this. Toby, you want to pop in here for a sec, and we'll say goodbye to the folks here on License to Steal.
Yeah,
How
let's
are you?
do it.
Doing great.
Good.
And when can I find your baseball show? Because I caught it the other day, part of it anyway, and really, really good stuff, as is the entire collection of shows that we see here on Bleacher Brothers.
Yeah, thank you first off. But my show is every Monday and Thursday from 2 to 3 p.m. So that's when I've been running it. This year, at least for next season, it might change. But as for now, that's the schedule.
All right, sounds good. AJ, our good friend, our fearless leader, who has been killing it. He loves Army. Have the bookies caught up with Army? 15.5 over the pesky Pirates of East Carolina. And if they, I called my bookie, Louis de Lipschitz. I said, can you give me Army in 15.5? And he said, you know what? The way they're playing, I'm also going to have to shove a Scud missile up your ass if you take Army and beat me again with that. I don't know. What do you think? Are they due to at least get challenged in one of these games? It seems like no spread is insurmountable for Army so far this year.
If it was any other team than maybe Army and Navy, I would say they're due for a loss against the spread. But this team's so disciplined, and you really see it every single game from them. That I just think if they're going to set the lines this low, I think they're going to clear it every time.
All right, and one final thought. I know we're up against the clock here, but what do they do? Do they establish themselves as real contenders, or does Louisville just prove once and for all that the Cristobal factor is too much to overcome?
I think that'll be a close game, but I think Cam Ward and company get it done. I think they're really solid. I think they are 100% contenders, and I think they are going to show it in this game.
All right, sounds good. All right, we have to run. A lot of fun being with you. Catch us again next week, 4 o'clock every Thursday with License to Steal. We should have another edition of Conversations working for you next Tuesday at 4 as well. Toby, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much. I know you're ticketed for stardom in this business. And for everybody connected with the Bleacher Brothers, I'm Jeff DeForest, and we will see you next time. Good luck, everybody.